Okay, we looked at hybrid work and security and privacy that are fundamental to shape the hybrid fabric of any organization in the digital first world. Let's now talk about the other big challenge that a startup needs to tackle to be future ready, keeping pace in the hyper competitive market. What's the secret sauce that a startup needs today to create competitive advantages with a view of hyper personalization? To discuss that, Lathika Pai, Country Head Venture Capital and Private Equity Partnerships, Microsoft India, sat down with Monish Darda, the co-founder and CTO of Icertis, and Abhay Singhal, the co-founder of the InMobi Group and the CEO of InMobi Ads. Let's listen in.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Microsoft Future Ready Startup Week. We all know that Indian startups are the pallbearers of innovation, disrupting industry norms, and enhancing capabilities with technology as the enabler. My name is Lathika Pai, and I'm the Country Head, Venture Capital and Private Equity Partnerships at Microsoft India. I'm excited to be here today to engage in a conversation with Monish Darda, co-founder and CTO Icertis, and Abhay Singhal, co-founder InMobi Group and CEO InMobi Advertising Platform. A very warm welcome to you both at Microsoft Future Ready Startup Week.
Thank you so much, Lathika. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much, Lathika, and nice to meet you, Monish. Looking forward to have this conversation.
Today's chat will cover how to build the right minimum viable product and monetization levers with the right tech stack with a view of hyper-personalization in the era of hyper-competition. We will also focus on how partnerships are crucial to reach customers at scale. With that, let me start with you, Abhay. Abhay, as one of the early startups to hit unicorn status in India, and also be recognized as one of the 75 milestones of Indian innovation, InMobi continues to build on its cloud strategy. Why did you decide to go cloud, and how has this helped you to scale?
Thank you, Lathika. Thank you for having me on this panel. It's incredible to be talking to you guys, and more so given Microsoft is one of our most important and strategic partners in this journey. So for us, this journey of cloud transformation probably started back in 2015-16 timeframe. This was the time where we were scaling very, very fast globally. And for us, it was becoming almost impossible to be able to keep up with the needs of scale up as we were going through. The hardware planning or the infrastructure planning used to be a very big cycle for us, and generally the lead time that was required to be able to do that sort of a planning was pretty intense. So just to give a background, InMobi has been in existence since 2007. So we actually were built completely on our own owned and operated infrastructure. And then we had to do the cloud transformation at the middle of our journey back in 2015 and 16. So as I look back, a lot of these things are very, hindsight is always 20/20. So if I look back, over the last 5 to 7 years, and if I were to write a letter to myself back in 2015 and 16, the 3 reasons I will tell you why I think the cloud transformation journey was critical for us. One, it sort of allowed us to completely not worry about the scale up infrastructure. We could scale at the drop of the hat. We could go up and down as the business is going up and down, and that was pretty transformative. Second, for us, I think it in general, it increased the speed of innovation for us. I'll say in general, because it's not true all across the board. And certainly wasn't true in the first couple of years as we were transforming. But by and large, I think we've been able to achieve that whole cloud native status and increase the speed of innovation for InMobi. And lastly, I think the most important reason has been is that we've been able to figure out how to work in an environment where our strategic partners and us are able to innovate directly for our customers. And there are a number of things that our cloud partner, in this case, Microsoft and InMobi, has been working on a number of different initiatives globally. So I think those were the 3 primary reasons why we went into it. And I'm kind of very glad that we were able to achieve that to some level.
Thank you, Abhay. I'm also very glad, and Microsoft is that you did, choose to move to the cloud. And I do like your three reasons. I think I'm going to put it on a post-it and keep it. The next question for you, Monish, is that Icertis has witnessed phenomenal organic growth, adding nearly twice as many customers and more than a dozen new partners since the pandemic. The Icertis customer roster now has market-leading brands across 19 countries and numerous industries. What tech adoption helped you deliver customer success amidst the steep growth and challenging tech and business landscape that the whole world has been through?
First of all, thank you, Lathika and the Microsoft team and Future Ready for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. And I must say, before I answer that question, I must say, Abhay, you probably wrote that letter, you forgot it, but I got it. So, so we were born in 2009 and we were born in the cloud. We were born in Azure. We started our journey. The first few lines of code I wrote was for the Microsoft Cloud and using the Microsoft stack. So it was very early adoption. At that time, Azure was not Azure. It was still a private preview called Red Dog within Microsoft. And we started that journey over the next 2 or 3 years as we built our platform out and we got really large customers, including Microsoft. But really, I think the tech, and obviously all the reasons that Abhay said are completely valid. I think for us, there were two imperatives. I think one imperative was, hey, because we were enterprise software right from the beginning, right? So having the technology that the CIO can identify with, having the technology that we can move large organizations to the cloud was very critical at that time. Early 2010s was a time where the cloud was not, as common as today. And for me personally, as the CTO, as the person who actually made sure that the software and the platform worked, it was very critical to have that technology in place to not focus on the infrastructure at all. And Abhay, you can imagine, the pain of managing your own infrastructure. We never went through that. I think we got that head start in the beginning saying, hey, we don't have to worry about the infrastructure at all. Focus on the business problem, focus on the customer, focus on the use case. I think that was huge in terms of how technology came to our rescue. There are 2 or 3 things that happened over the years. I think the first one, as Azure evolved, and by the way, Microsoft is a 360-degree partner. They are a customer. We are a customer. We go to market with Microsoft. I think it's been incredible how much influence we have had on Azure's evolution as well. We've been in almost all of the private and public previews of SQL, of storage, as well as most of the networking stuff and security stuff. All of that technology evolution was as part of the partnership, which was very good. I think having Microsoft being there, supporting our journey, supporting our evolution. I think we're probably the first startup, I can say with fairly good confidence, we were the first startup that is coming from the Azure ecosystem that went to be a unicorn, right? So that's the way technology actually helped us. I think we had scale at our fingertips that our customers demanded, and not just simple scale, but cloud scale, hyperscale at our fingertips because of the cloud. We had all of the technology stack, the tooling, the DevOps that Microsoft evolved on Azure. We had all of the AI, especially in the last 2 years. The whole cognitive services on Azure has been a blessing because we've been able to focus on all of the commoditized AI, use it directly, infuse it in our platform, and deliver value to our customers as quickly as we think about use cases. And that's been massive. The one last thing I would say, in enterprise software, there are 3 things that are important: that scale, there is security, and there is the complexity of the enterprise, right? The last one we solved by being a platform rather than a product. The first 2 we solved by just being on Azure. And I think that's where the technology journey has really taken us. And it's been a fantastic journey, and I'm looking forward to the next 10 years very eagerly.
Thank you, Monish. I think you've summed it really well in terms of all the three different aspects of where Microsoft, as a partner, as a customer, and as I think innovating together. That really is one of the key takeaways in terms of our partnership with Icertis. Abhay, InMobi is on a phenomenal expansion spree too across geographies, customers, industries with a potential IPO on the cards. For this, not only does InMobi need a technology moat, it also needs to ensure its highly skilled workforce feels empowered and proud of their association with InMobi. Governance is a big issue today across the board for revenue recognition, reporting, data privacy, customer service. All of this needs to come in place. How do you do this at an InMobi, and what will your advice be to unicorns and startups who are on the path to create international businesses?
That's a very interesting question that you asked, Lathika, because I think most of the entrepreneurs that I meet today or have been meeting in last 10, 15 years, can't believe I'm saying this. This is 15th year of InMobi today or this year. Almost everyone has huge global aspirations, but seldom people understand the complexity that it comes with being global. It almost feels like but then it's also a business necessity. I mean, we're sitting in a market where I'm sure Monish would agree that software as a services is not a huge market in India. So if you need to find your customer base, you need to go out of the country. And in our case, as we were starting InMobi and we have to go into advertising, India is not a big market in advertising as of yet. So we needed to expand into the China, the United States, the Western Europe, and more importantly, the countries which are closer to India, namely Southeast Asia and other places. So long before we knew, we were already more global than what we had set out to be at the beginning of InMobi. And in fact, for us, it was also a very interesting path, because for us, we're in the business of advertising services. While we create enterprise software, but our software is to enable advertisers and publishers to make money through advertising. So for us, our publishers could be based in whatever country you want, as long as they have users in that specific other country. Then we're open for business in that country. So for us, this one-to-one correlations was never true. In fact, I tell this story to a lot of entrepreneur friends of mine that we almost became global not because we wanted to be global, but because our business was global, and we didn't know that our business is actually global. So for us to be able to manage this complexity, it is something that I think has been in our DNA since the beginning itself. It wasn't something that we had to develop a muscle post our cloudification, as I call it. It's been a muscle that I think we had to develop fundamental to our business itself. But as we go more towards taking probably the next steps in InMobi's journey, the regulations and the compliance and your ability to be able to do that per the standards layout in the markets is becoming more and more critical. And that's where that whole ability to adopt enterprise grade softwares to manage our operations, to manage our financial reconciliation, to manage all the other things come extremely handy. And in fact, that is where we've been working extensively again with Microsoft and bringing your enterprise suite in our forum. So I would say it's a journey for us. I don't think I would call it yet a victory. But the place where we have come now, it's probably miles ahead of where we were. And in fact, there is one more syndrome that a lot of Indian entrepreneurs face. It's called not invented here syndrome. Somewhere I think, and I don't know your perspective on it, but certainly within InMobi, we had this huge belief that we can build it better than everybody else. And what's this enterprise software? I can build that code overnight. and then ship it and use it. And I think it took us probably good 3-4 years to get off that mindset where we're now fully confident to be able to adopt any great third-party stack and bring that and fit that into our own infrastructure, and not really be worried whether that infrastructure is going to work or not. So I think my message to my young entrepreneurs is that look, spend 90% of your time on getting the business problem correct. Getting the infrastructure correct is not solving the business problem. Getting the software stack correct to solve the business problem is not solving the business problem. There are nuances of that, and we can get very busy solving the infrastructure needs and the other things, and that doesn't move the needle. So I think that's the one learning that we have had over the past few years, and that's a message that I would pass on to anyone who's in that journey.
Thank you, Abhay. I was smiling when I heard the NIH term, right? The not invented here. I mean, every software engineer out there worth his or her salt is always believes that they can build better, stronger, code faster. But I really like your message, which is focus on the business and in terms of building the business versus worrying about the infrastructure stack that you adopt. And I'm really glad that Microsoft again is such a strong partner, of InMobi. Monish, you mentioned a little earlier about Azure, and Icertis today is one of the key market forces in establishing contract lifecycle management from good to have technology to a must-have system of record, deservedly growing in valuations and placing yourselves in the list of top unicorns in India. How has adopting AI ML technology been key to your success? I know you mentioned it briefly, but it'd be great to understand how Azure AI has helped transform your business.
No, absolutely, Lathika. And I echo the sentiment Abhay expressed. I think it's not the stack, it's not the technology, it's the business problem. It's the business case that is so important. If you can get that right, the technology kind of just dives in, it just fits in. And then, it's all a natural evolution of your platform. I think one of the things that we've done over the years, if you look at AI, and any data scientist will tell you that AI doesn't work till you have data. So the first thing we had to do is make sure we had that data, we had that at that scale. And when we knew that we were probably the largest repository of curated contracts on the planet, we said, now that's the time where we want to use AI as a technology, not as a hype, a word that everybody uses, not as a cliche, not as, call Icertis an AI-led company, but actually use AI to solve a set of business problems. And I think if you look at the AI landscape, you have machine learning, you have natural language processing, you have custom algorithms that go deep. You have obviously neural networks, deep learning. You have these sets of things that are trained on data that is news articles, that's the web, that's unstructured data that comes in, but you have to tailor it to the data that you have, right? So that was our first kind of way of thinking about this, saying, hey, how do I actually now apply the models that are already available? Because it's very, very hard to create a model from scratch on your own, right? An algorithm on your own. All of that work is done already for the most part. Most of that, the new stuff that is coming in is, improving on, how this whole thing works. Most of the AI algorithms, in fact, are 30 to 40 years old, right? It's just now in the last decade that you have had the compute power to actually make those algorithms come real on real data. But what Azure AI did, especially with cognitive services, the whole list of cognitive services, was to take all of that commoditized software, that algorithms that are already being trained on massive amounts of data, including the transformer models like GPT-3, and then take that and make sure that we had different techniques, including using that data and making sure using the models and making sure that we use our own data to train those models further and enhance them to make sure that we were solving business problems. And one of the things which is very interesting in contract lifecycle management for us is to be very modest, we actually ended up defining what contract lifecycle management stood for. We completely redefined the category, and we said, hey, this is the fifth system of record. Whether you're sending an offer letter, whether you're doing a sales contract, whether you're doing a procurement contract, an NDA, merger and acquisition, you need a contract. Every dollar in and out of the company actually needs a contract, which means if you can put all of the rules of that contract in a central place like Icertis, then that central fifth system of record actually holds your rules of business. And every other transaction system can come back and check whether the transaction is happening according to the contract. Now, that's a very interesting thing from a AI perspective, because what you're now doing is in the contract, you're memorializing the intent of the contract. But what you're doing on the ground with the transactions is you're realizing the intent of the contract, right? And the realizing of the intent is essentially matching what is happening on the ground with what is memorialized in the contract. And that's where AI fits perfectly. Whether it is volume discounts, whether it is penalties, whether it is revenue that you didn't know you had in your contracts, like COLA clauses, for example, for IT services companies, where you're looking at relocation and location costs and cities and so on, making sure that you can bill them correctly and at the right price. Currency variations, for example, you spend a ton of time negotiating your contracts, and then in real life, you forget what you actually memorialized in them, right? And we bring that intent together, and that's where the AI is such a perfect fit. And all of the cognitive services, the whole stack, we use, keyword recognition, we use named entity recognition, we use all of the AI studio that we can actually model WYSIWYG, our pipelines, our cleanup of data, the whole data pipeline that goes through actually implementing a model and making it real has been fantastic for us. And that's where, first of all, we save a ton of money because we don't have to run all of the GPUs and all of the expensive hardware. But we also kind of get a set of off-the-shelf tools that have been trained by the best in the business with the best data that is in the world that is available, and then we can tune it to what we need. And I think that's the power of AI in general and Azure AI in particular.
Thank you, Monish. Clearly, no data, no AI. Because that's really the bottom line here, and I'm really happy to hear that it wasn't a cliche term versus a necessity for what you're doing with the millions and millions of records probably that you process on a daily basis. Exactly. So thank you for that response. Abhay, as you grow and every single minute, I think InMobi's ads are reaching global viewership and being managed globally. What are the gaps and voids in technology and otherwise that must be addressed to meet your vision and goals of creating scale, differentiation, and profitability? And a question that I asked earlier, but you probably didn't get a chance to answer is, what about the culture in terms of the InMobi employees that you're trying to build at this particular time in terms of collaborations, in terms of engagement with your workforce that is, you need process and tools to help you to really scale?
Interesting. And before I get into your question, as Monish, you were explaining about memorialization to realization, I was reminded of this one interesting statement that I say very too often. Contracts are created by friends, but read by enemies. So I think that is.
I'm going to quote you on that.
That is something that you're doing. That we all hope that we never have to reread our contracts ever, but whenever we read, I think our relationships have become sour by then. So I think we need all the AI in the world to be able to predict the corner cases because intent will be lost by then. But no, interesting. I think your question there, Lathika, was primarily around, what are the gaps and the voids in the technology that we see today, and how they have to be met with our vision. So I'm a firm believer that any innovation happens at the edge of what is known and unknown in the world. What we know today is that the technology can work at scale, huge scale. I mean, we are probably delivering trillions of ads per month at any point in time while we are having this conversation. InMobi ads would have been seen probably about 1.5 billion times during the time we have already spoken this conversation. So we know that the technology can work at scale, period. The second fact that we know is that the future of the world is more private. Whether you look at the consumer privacy, whether you look at the enterprise privacy, whether you look at countries' privacy, at every level, the future of the world is more private. The third fact that we know is that to bring any sort of innovation together, we need to be able to join the data sets or the two disconnected pieces of information that we didn't know, whether it is for an enterprise or for a user or for a country. We need to bring the things together. So for us, every innovation that we talk about in InMobi today, or any tech void that we talk today, we talk at the most fundamental layer of how are we able to join different knowledge sets that we know of this user, knowledge set that I may have myself, or the knowledge set that I may not have myself, but my partners have it. The industry has proven that, over the period of time, the scale only comes by driving the innovation and making the consumer feel technology as a magic. Almost when the technology gets out of the way is when the magic happens. So somewhere I think for us that has been one of the biggest and the most critical component. And to support Monish's point, AI is front and center, but what you are putting into the AI and how ready are you as an organization to able to put that and bring that to the AI is probably more critical than ever, and something that probably most of the people forget as they embark on that journey. Now, culturally, this I will join that to the previous point that I was mentioning. You can very easily get very busy very quickly trying to solve the fundamental infrastructure issue and not really coming problem backward. So for us, the problem that we are trying to solve today is the same that the problem we were trying to solve 15 years back. How do you make the ads more relevant? How do you make the consumer not look at an ad and feel unhappy or feel disgust or say, oh, another ad that I have to see and another price that I have to pay to get a free content? Same problem, but the contours of that problem has changed. And now when we look at our engineers and when we look at our data scientists, our focus to them is that, guys, look at it. You have the new tools and technology and solutions available to create the world's biggest data lake. Have we created the mechanism to be able to bring our partners' data into it? Specifically, some of the work that we are working with Microsoft on various different areas that we can talk at a later point in time. But certainly, how do you bring these different information sets together so that you can innovate? And that is what that is the culture that we are trying to build, which is probably a cloud first or a cloud native culture within InMobi.
Great, thank you so much, Abhay. And Monish, we have a couple of rapid fire questions, and the first question to you, Monish, is one thing that always makes you feel future ready.
So you won't be able to see it in the back. I have a Jules Verne quote which says, I modified it a little bit, but what happens in life is always the unexpected. I think my mantra to be future ready is to make sure that you expect the unexpected and then have the ability to, and the preparation and the tools and the partners to be ready for the future.
Abhay, what is the one thing that always makes you feel future ready?
I think when I talk to my data infrastructure guys, and if they'll come back and tell me that they've created an infrastructure where we can power hundreds of experiments at any point in time, is the day I feel future ready. We are far away from it. In almost always people will come back and say, oh, we don't have the right kind of infrastructure. We don't have the right sort of ability to match the data. And my problem is that if you're not going to be able to bring those things together, then you would not be future ready at all. So I think I look at deep in the core and how much are we able to put our data to good use. And that is what makes me feel future ready.
Great. Thank you. Monish, one piece of advice you would give to young entrepreneurs?
Well, never take advice.
I mean, were you referring that to my son who's an entrepreneur or to everyone out there?
No. I think it's well, I probably exaggerate a little bit, listen to people, of course, but don't take advice. I think as an entrepreneur, you're breaking new ground, you're creating disruption, you're starting on a journey that probably no one has, with your exact background, has started before. And you're the first. And this is my 7th startup. So I can say with all of the hindsight, all of the 2020 vision going back, is that, you have to chart your own road. I think it's so critical. And there will be so many people who are giving you advice. You're starting with your parents, by the way, and then going all the way through to all the gyanis and the gurus and, everyone in the world. And you still have to chart your own path. So I think it's incredibly difficult, difficult, but important to do that.
So, Abhay, the question goes back to you. One piece of advice you would give to young, entrepreneurs?
Yeah, giving advice after Monish said seems optimal. So I think the only thing that I would say is it's not an advice, but it is something which is my own principle in life. Life does not happen once your startup is successful. Life happens while you are building the startup. So just keep living, because more often than not, we put everything on pause while the startup is happening, and that journey never ends, and it only leads to more misery. So live life as you're building it.
Great. Monish, Abhay, thank you so much. It's been fantastic hearing you both speak today at Microsoft Future Ready. Both InMobi and Icertis are very, very strong partners. We take a lot of pride to see you grow, and we are really looking forward to growing with both your companies. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. And Abhay, thank you for giving me all the cues for all the answers. So appreciate that. Lathika, thank you for being such a good host.
Thank you very much, Lathika. Thank you, Monish. It was a pleasure being on this panel.